I'm gonna play a little tiny portion of a song and see if you can come up with the title. Did you guess Mary Had a Little Lamb? You smarty pants. Perhaps you've heard the absolute banger of Mary Had a Little Lamb, but did you know that the same chick that wrote that song is also responsible for us associating the pumpkin with Thanksgiving? Not only that, but really the reason that we even celebrate Thanksgiving like as a holiday. I love the story of why we associate pumpkins with Thanksgiving because it is so like classic American. It combines indigenous ingenuity, this melting pot of different cultures, and a good old-fashioned marketing campaign during the Civil War. Pumpkins are a type of squash, and squash is one of the oldest domesticated plants. Squash originated in what is now Oaxaca at least 7500 BC. The originals were small, bitter, and probably used more for their seeds than for their fleshy fruit. There's two types of squash. We have summer squash and winter squash. Summer squash, like zucchini, it has a thin outer shell that you can eat, and then winter squash, which is very hardy, can last through the winter, and because of its thick skin, it was widely used by indigenous people throughout the Americas to, survive the winters. Now, natives figured out companion planting and would plant squash, corn, and beans together, which you probably know they're known as the Three Sisters. This is so amazing. We see versions of this all over the world. These three plants, when consumed together, provide like all of the nutrition that the body needs. It's all 9 essential amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. It's abundant in a symphony of vitamins and minerals. Not only that, but the way that natives process the corn in a process called nixtamalization, processing corn with an alkali, increased the availability of niacin and calcium. So that prevented natives from getting nutrition-based diseases like pellagra, scurvy, beriberi. Like these are things that people in other portions of the world were like mass dying from. Now they didn't know that, but they knew that, which I think is really cool. Now, why do we call them pumpkins? The French explorer Jacques Cartier took a little voyage to Canada and he saw a pumpkin and he gave it the Greek word for melon, pepon. Well, it's kind of like the Middle French version of Greek for melon, pepon. Anyway, now because of the way language works, by the time we get to William Shakespeare's time in The Merry Wives of Windsor, he's calling them pumpion. Now this is where I'd like to take a little tiny side adventure for all you spelling Nazis out there. Spelling is has not been a thing. Correct spelling hasn't been a thing for a lot of people in a lot of different places for much of human history. William Shakespeare misspelled his own name in lots of different ways throughout his life. So, that's kind of a newbie. So it's not surprising that over the years and through the marriage of all these different languages coming together in the Americas, we arrive on this kind of new word, pumpkin. So our ancestors, indigenous and otherwise, ate a lot of squash. And by the time we get to the 1800s, there's many different versions of squash as there are types of dogs. But the version of squash that we know as the jack-o'-lantern pumpkin is called the pumpkin. And that brings us to a beautiful story of death and damnation. Jack-o'-the-lantern is an Irish folk tale. It goes a little something like this. There was this dude named Jack, and he was a douche. But he made a deal with the devil to not have to go to hell, even though he was stingy ne'er-do-well. Well, he comes to the end of his days, and what do you know? Jack's not getting into heaven. So he ends up just having to roam around Earth. Well, the devil gives him a piece of coal to light the way. What a nice fella. Jack takes a turnip and hollows it out and uses the coal in the turnip for this little lantern. Now this was a normal thing for poor Irish people who didn't have enough money to buy a copper lantern at the time. Well, when the Irish came to the United States, they saw pumpkins, these much bigger versions of turnips, abandoned the turnip lanterns and moved to pumpkin lanterns. And it kind of slowly became this tradition at Thanksgiving, not Halloween yet, at Thanksgiving for the kids to carve faces into the pumpkins and put the lanterns in there. And they would try to scare each other. Kind of like this, kiddie table thing. Here, take this sharp knife over there and go stab this large squash. It wasn't until later in the 1800s that kind of moved towards Halloween, as Halloween became more of this kind of scary holiday. And the vast majority of pumpkin purchases in the United States are for decoration. which I think is just really sad because the pumpkin is like so nutritious, it grows so easily, it can feed a lot of people. The vast majority of human consumption of pumpkins is in pre-packaged, pre-made pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, which brings us back to this lady and this bang. Sarah Joseph Hale, the same woman that wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb, campaigned American politicians for 17 years to try to get Thanksgiving to be a national holiday. Now, this beautiful woman, bless her heart, she believed that the making of the Thanksgiving holiday would be the thing that united Americans. She thought if we all come around the table, right, I'll bring the beers. We'll roll a few and we'll have a good, united, brotherly love unification time. Now, before she even campaigned for politicians to make this national holiday, she was working on it. She wrote a novel called Northwoods in 1827 that detailed this traditional Thanksgiving feast with the delicious plump pumpkin pie, the juicy turkey on the table being carved by the patriarch. And it helped that she was also the editor of like this women's publication, so she could give these plugs, you know, over time about this traditional Thanksgiving feast that brings everybody together for the holiday. So by the time Abraham Lincoln officially made Thanksgiving a holiday in 1863, she had been working for decades to promote these foods as a part of this tradition. And she helped link them in the public imagination to this idea of patriotic unitedness. Thanksgiving was a PR stunt. America. Now, lest you think that I'm being like cynical or sarcastic about it, I love this story. I think that the story of the American pumpkin and Thanksgiving is this great example of indigenous ingenuity, necessity is the mother of invention, survival, all of these different cultures and their stories coming together to make something really cool. And for that, I am grateful.